Hi, and welcome back to Pushbox Banter. I'm Daniel.
And I'm Craig, and today we're going to talk about some wonderful things.
Yeah, we're back in China.
First time in a while.
Yeah, first time in a while. It's been about 5 years since we've been in China at the Shanghai circuit. So
Well, since the F1 race has been in China.
it's a race that's been around since 2004. Hamilton's been the biggest winner, 6 times winning, 6 poles. And it's a sellout show for the Shanghai circuit. And we have a homegrown hero,
Yes, we do.
Zhou Guanyu.
Yes,
I think I said that correctly.
I'm going to go with that. I always just call him Joe.
And so we've got a really interesting weekend because right now we have this new generation of car, and we're seeing these teams that have absolutely no data with the new generation of car at the circuit because obviously COVID gave us this little time of like 5 years where we weren't there. So it's been an interesting weekend, and we'll get more into the details. But going into the weekend, we had Pirelli give us a C2, C3, C4. So kind of harder of the hards, softer of the softs, going into the weekend because we have high braking, high lateral forces, and it's a really interesting track. I think you have some details about.
Yeah. So one of the things with this track, when it was made, they made it to as a Chinese symbol. I think it's called the Shang, and which it means. So please forgive me if I mispronounce that. My Chinese is not the best, but it means to ascend, which I think that's really cool. They're talking about. I think it's really cool. One, that they did this in an actual symbol that actually means something, which is really cool. I don't think a lot of tracks are that way. I'm going to have to look that up. But the other is turn 1 and 2, which are the 270 degrees, that they made that intentionally to mean like the yin and yang. And they meant that to wish luck to the drivers as they start their race, which is pretty cool.
That's super.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. So
it's also home to the sprint race, one of 6 for this year. The first one of the calendar, so that's nice. And I guess we could get right into the sprint.
Yeah. So the sprint race some people don't like it. I think it's pretty cool. I think it adds a different dynamic, and some of the things that they do are a little bit different. You've got things are a little bit more compact, but with this year's race, it's interesting because the weather was different at all the time. So the qualifying, the weather is different. The actual race, the weather is different. Then the qualifying for the Grand Prix, the weather was different. So each time, like, you're thinking, okay, well, they use all of these practices in the sprint race to kind of come up with their setup for qualifying for the Grand Prix and so on. Well, it didn't really work out that way.
One thing that what happened was they actually changed the format of the sprints. Normally the format is you have practice, then you have qualifying for the race, and then the following day you have qualifying for the sprint race, and then the sprint race.
Yeah.
And then the race at the end.
Okay.
But because I think we didn't have a lot of data and the teams were kind of like struggling with like, well, we don't know what we're going to do. The race might not be good if we do it in the standard format. They did change it, right? And so
I like the way that they change it. I think it makes more sense.
So do I. And one of the interesting things was I think it didn't matter that they changed it just because of what you were saying, changes in the weather. Like, it didn't matter that they did that because at the end of the day, all of the seasons basically showed up between practice and the sprint race and even the race itself. Definitely a curveball for them. But yeah, no, there's a lot of, the cars could not stay on track, whether it was dry, whether there was sprinkles, and then a little bit more kind of like rain. Not a whole lot, but they just couldn't stay on track. They had mentioned that the track was resurfaced, and maybe there was some confusion on what resurfaced meant, but I think it meant repainted.
Yeah, in some parts of the world, that's what they do.
Yeah.
Is they repaint the surface of the road, and that's resurfacing. And I don't, and this is something that I find kind of interesting. Is like, okay, if you put paint down on a road, or you, like if you guys go out and walk out in an asphalt parking lot and you walk on the lines during with it raining, it's going to be way more slick than than when you're off of that paint. So I'm sure that this is a little bit different paint. It probably has a little bit of sand or something in it to give it a little bit of texture to it, but
Abrasion.
I don't know, some sort of abrasive. Yeah, so it's
exactly.
not like 100% slick, but
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, we saw the cars couldn't stay on track, especially when it started raining. I mean, we were talking about 2+ minutes during quali, right? So yeah, that was really interesting. I mean, everybody basically didn't have a lap until like the last bit of the sprint qualifying 3, right? So really cool. And the race itself was quite interesting as well, because in the quali we saw a lot of folks kind of off position. You know, they were like not in the position you'd expect them to be. So you had Norris, you had Hamilton, and a couple of the front runners were like 4th and 5th and 6th. So and Alonso again in the mix. We had some trouble kind of at the first lap of the sprint race. What was your take on that?
Well, I thought it was pretty interesting. You've got Norris in pole position. You've got Hamilton in P2. Hamilton, basically, like he gets a good enough start that going into turn 1, he's got the inside line. So Norris has to stay, he elects to stay on the outside and try to just stay even with him, and if not pass him, obviously. But in doing so, he loses traction. And so he goes off of the tarmac, and loses position, and then he's down to what, 5th, 6th?
Oh, he lost. Yeah, he lost like 6 positions. I think he was at 7th position at the end of that lap, or at the end of that first 2 corners.
Yeah, so that was it for him,
pretty
like
much
right there. So Hamilton, all of a sudden, Hamilton's back, and he's like running in the front and loving life, and but. So that was pretty fascinating there. But then, of course, you've got a couple of people that are behind him that are like, no, we're going to reel you in, and one of those is Verstappen. Yeah, and so he had started in 4th. You also got Alonso up there that started in 3rd, but Verstappen's just man on a mission. Within lap 5 or 6, somewhere around in there, he's passing Hamilton and.
Yeah, he just tore through the field essentially, and then after he passed Hamilton, he was like a second on every lap after that, right?
Yeah,
over Hamilton.
Yeah, so he's like he's increasing his lead by a second on every lap after that, which is, I mean, it's amazing. Just watching that.
Yeah, I think it ended up being like 13+ seconds at the end of the sprint race, which is, I mean, I don't know that there's any words to describe what that is other than like complete domination.
Pretty
I mean, there's just you can't put other words to it.
I know, it was kind of fun to see him though start from a little bit further back than the actual pole position. See what he did, but it's Yeah, pretty impressive there.
Yeah, it's a shame for Norris. Like, he definitely didn't have a good takeoff, right? Like he just his first lap was terrible. In the rain, you got to give it to him. Like he obviously got pole for the sprint. Like he's a good driver. He can take advantage of that when everything else is kind of level in terms of like the rain and lack of grip. He did what needed to be done in terms of like getting it to the top of the grid, which is great. But you got to deliver. Yeah. And that first lap was a travesty because that car could have been third, fourth. That's where it should have been, considering he started in pole.
Yeah.
Obviously, he was never gonna beat Verstappen, and Verstappen we knew was gonna do, juggernaut his way through the field. But the way he did it was the way Verstappen did that was just on another level. I don't think we've seen the likes of that in a very long time. I mean, we're talking, I don't know, Schumacher days or something. Like, it's just, we just haven't seen it. So,
Well, if they would make him start further back, I think we would get see
you like
this each week.
like a reverse grid, right?
Yeah, like a reverse grid for him. That's what they should
Imagine.
do, the Max rules. Yeah,
Exactly.
You're too good, Max, to start
Yeah.
up here at the front.
They were talking about that in Formula One for a while, of having a reverse grid sprint or a reverse grid something. I know that's they do that in some other categories where they do reverse grids. So
Would be kind of interesting.
that would be super cool. It would give definitely the bottom of the field some, hope, some level. It could level set, and also the drama usually happens not in the clean air, right? It happens when you've got traffic and you've got folks that don't have traction, and they're like braking far beyond where they need to brake, or locking up or something like that. But we saw lots of battles with Sainz and Alonso. I think that was probably the highlight of that sprint race.
That was pretty awesome.
Was the third, fourth, fifth, sixth with Alonso, Sainz, Perez, Leclerc. Oh man, that was so good. Great battle. This is what makes those sprints like super exciting. And I know there's like purists that are like, nah, we don't like them. Leave the sport alone. That's maybe more of an American thing or something. But no, man, like, this was great. You had Alonso outperforming that car week in and week out, but like in that sprint, he was literally driving the wheels off of that car, and tried his best up until like 3 or 4 laps, 3 laps to the end of the race, right? And battling with his countryman Sainz, and in that battle with Sainz, they're battling back and forth basically for like the better part of 1 lap, and they leave the door open for Perez, who's trailing behind, all in dirty air, messing up his tires, and scoops in and takes 3rd place from Alonso and from Sainz. And then you see in between, in all that melee, you have Sainz and Alonso kind of bumping and touching and things like that. So, that ended up resulting in a puncture eventually, right, for Alonso, and then ultimately a DNF. But it didn't seem like he cared, once everything was all said and done. He seemed very happy. He's like, oh yeah, like this, regardless of how we end tomorrow or how this kind of ended today, like, I'm super happy where the car is and what I'm doing with it. And he knows, he more or less said it's like, oh, it's what I'm doing to the car. It's I'm doing what I'm doing with the race car. So and he's got the racecraft, right?
Dude, he definitely does.
Yeah. And what happened with Sainz and Leclerc after that?
Yeah, they bumped a little bit.
Yeah,
A little rear wheel bumping.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. So exactly, we have Sainz and Alonso. Sainz finally overtakes him, as does Leclerc, and then you have the battle of the teammates. We know, and we've been saying it over and over, we've got Sainz on a rampage, on a revenge drive this whole season, and then you have Leclerc, who's actually pretty brilliant this weekend, I think. And they're getting wheel to wheel. Obviously, Sainz had been battling Alonso, had been defending from Perez for basically the majority of the sprint. And you get to basically 2 laps before the end of the race, and Leclerc, they start fighting basically on track, pushing them off the off-track limits. Sainz pushing Leclerc. Leclerc later saying that Sainz was way, over the limit, as he says. He's very politically correct, very nice, right? And they get along, but I don't think Leclerc was very happy with Sainz.
Yeah, he seemed pretty irritated.
He was super irritated, but we ended up seeing that Leclerc got the better of Sainz in that run. So we ended up with Verstappen. We ended up with Verstappen, Hamilton, Perez, and then Leclerc.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and then Sainz right behind him. So it was an interesting sprint. And
it was exciting.
I
mean, you had all the
honestly,
excitement at the beginning going around turn one.
Yeah, you had it.
And then you had it all of this with Alonso and Sainz and Leclerc and Perez, all of that at the end of the race.
Exactly.
So yeah, it was definitely exciting throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, no, it was a good one.
Yeah.
But then we had some other winners and losers for this the actual weekend. I mean, we touched on Max a little bit. What are your thoughts?
Where do you begin? Like with Max, it's, I mean, you have all these positive adjectives that you can throw his way that are so valid. Just watching him, it's amazing. Like he comes in, so with the sprint race, he starts in fourth, he ends up winning, and just drives off from everybody. And then like you've got in qualifying, he did really well. It was a different situation because it was raining a lot. Things were really slick, but he was still able to pull good times. And then you come back for qualifying for the Grand Prix, and he's just dominating again. And he's it was pretty crazy. He goes pole position.
What was that stat?
What is it? 5, like he's second person, I think, ever. He ties
Nika Hakkinen.
Yeah, Nika for what was it? 5 pole
poles.
positions and 5 Grand Prix in a row.
And the
to start the season.
100th pole for Red Bull.
Yeah, that's right. 100th pole for Red Bull. Yeah. So 15 years ago was their first pole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Super exciting for them.
Yeah.
Good for them.
Yeah. They're hitting all these records this year. Good old job.
I think, oh my goodness. I think I'd read that Horner was saying since the last time they were in China that Max has won 50% of all the races ever since.
That sounds about right. Yeah,
so,
that sounds about right because that's around the time that he started winning everything.
Yeah, he's on a tear. He's unstoppable right now. They cemented it. It's done. The season's over. The season's over. For at least first and maybe second. I don't know about second, but I mean, people are talking right now. Like the teams are just thinking, like, oh, can I be third? Is that's the goal? Can I be third? And I think Perez for the most part will more than likely get second, but I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
What about? So we were talking about Norris during the sprint. When we were talking about the sprint race, but overall, in the race, he did pretty all right. I think obviously he was a bit of a loser in the sprint race, turn one, lap one, like, all that effort wasted from exciting quali for the sprint goes into the sprint and obviously fails there, but chokes up a little bit. But in the race, he got super lucky, and I could say like a bit of a winner during the race, and probably where it counts because you could obviously get the most amount of points. But he secured a P2, which was nice. Again, I think it was luck. We saw that when Bottas had the VSC come out, Norris was really consistent with his current set of tires. He hadn't pitted and was able to pit during that VSC, and everyone else behind him had already pitted, so he was basically leading the race and then got a half off pit stop.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, it's called living right. In some places. No, he did. He really got lucky there to get the virtual safety car going, and gave him an opportunity there because they were. his concern, and I think McLaren's concern, was that the Ferrari had the better car.
Yeah.
And going into the race.
Yeah.
And so he thought, they're probably, maybe they didn't do as well in qualifying for the Grand Prix as McLaren did, but they thought that Ferrari was going to catch him up. And so they were pretty concerned, and they were talking back and forth about, when do we pit? When's Ferrari going to pit? Yada, yada. So next thing you know, you've got a safety car, and they end up, he gets lucky with that. Because I think he would have tried to push it a little bit further. Possibly.
You know what? I think it was well orchestrated. I think he orchestrated it himself by managing those tires, right? Had he not managed those tires, he would have been in the pits earlier, as did everybody else, right? So he did something right by going long in that first stint. And all it takes is that, 1 or 2 laps, or in the 2 or 3 laps. And then you got a VSC, and all of a sudden, you find yourself in the front of the field.
Yeah, so. I mean, he commented, because he started 4th, was that right?
Yeah. So
he commented at some point that Alonso was like really pushing it and using up his tires. And so that's, good news for them. That's one, at the time Alonso was ahead of him.
Yeah.
But at some point he commented a little bit later in the race, I think, that he was having some brake issues and are concerned about tire wear and braking and so forth. And they were telling him, hey, just use the engine braking.
That's right.
And that was one of the options. And he was like, no, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I understood that, because he knows he's got a good feel for what he's going to do out there, and he's feeling good about it. And he drove really well, because he got into that second place. Verstappen, of course, is just taking off and leaving him behind.
Right.
But yet he's staying about the same distance in front of Perez the rest of the way.
And matching his times, basically. And yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's good for him. Second podium of the year. I think the last time he was in Australia, P2 as well. So he's kind of becoming notorious for having a ton of podiums and no first place.
Yeah. I don't remember if he was on the podium in Australia or not. My memory kind of fades there, but he's actually doing pretty well. He's had like 8 podiums in all in his career. Yeah. So he hasn't won any of them, which I think is like, it may be like eventually a record or something.
Yeah,
for longest, most amount of podiums without a win. But
he's getting. But
he's
up
also
there.
facing. I mean, he's racing against Max Verstappen.
Yeah.
So I mean, I would say like the way that he drove was excellent this weekend. They had a really good weekend.
Yeah, overall.
Yeah.
Aside from the sprint. Yeah.
Yeah, and aside from that. But he did have some interesting comments. He was like, at the beginning of the year, I felt like at some point this year that we'll win a race against Red Bull. And so he does feel, and he said, he still feels that way. He's like, they're not there yet, but he said that they're moving in the right direction. He feels like they will at some later point. Now, maybe he's talking about Singapore, where Red Bull traditionally has a little bit of trouble, but hey, regardless.
They're working on something in that factory. Like, they've got upgrades coming.
Yeah.
They're bringing them in slowly, so we know it's only a matter of time. And they're pretty confident, Andrea, the team principal, said the same, has more or less said the same thing, that they're anticipating, challenging for some wins and stuff like that. So
yeah, it's good for the game.
I don't know if I don't know if they've got 20 seconds that they can find and carve out somewhere between now and the end of the season. But
yeah, well, you don't win a race at 20 seconds at a time. You gotta win in smaller
increments.
portions.
Yeah, I'm sure that they'll find the performance in that car, and there's probably more to get from that car, so we'll see.
I think so.
And then we had Alonso. I think Alonso's big. Has been a big story for even before the race.
He really has.
Yeah,
like he's had a lot of good stuff this week.
He's right now. I think he's the face of Formula One.
Past week, I mean, he gets his contract extension for 2 years, so he's signed through 26. So he was, and him talking about it, he was like, that he talked. Light talks with other teams. Yeah. But, this was his first choice, and that he's glad to kind of get that. And he feels like they're moving in a positive direction. And hoping to compete for a championship. He did mention in 26 hoping to compete for a championship. So as the new regs come into place, they'll have a new powertrain with the Honda. It's going to be their new engine instead of Mercedes.
Whole new chassis, new powertrain, right? Mm-hmm. Everything's going to change. So will be exciting.
Yeah, so leading up, he's kind of getting a lot of the headlines and so forth. But I mean, throughout the races, he's qualifies at the top in both the sprint and in the Grand Prix. He's qualified third, was it, in the Grand Prix?
Yeah,
might be off on that. But he's up there, so he's being super competitive with that. They get a start in the race. He's right at the front. He's pushing it. And all throughout the race, he has some different drama that kind of goes along with him.
Per usual.
Per usual. Yeah,
I mean, when you're outperforming the car and you're totally out of, out of your place per se, right? Like, you're going to be holding up the field. You're going to be doing things that, that are a little bit more creative than those that have the better cars behind you.
Yeah.
So
and it's interesting too, watching him versus his other teammate Lance Stroll, and how Stroll operates his car. So you've got during the virtual safety car time, and they're about a lap away. I think they're on their final lap, and they're kind of getting all warmed up and ready to go. And they come into this one curve, and everybody's slowing down. And Alonso, he actually locks up the brakes a little bit. You got smoke coming out from his car. Yeah. You've got Hamilton, right? I think I'm going to get this order right. But you've got Hamilton, and then you've got somebody else behind him, and I think Piastri, and then you've got Ricciardo behind him, and then you've got Stroll. Stroll just runs right into the back of Ricciardo. So far, his wheels look like they come off a foot or two off. So much so that. It's pretty dramatic. If you guys haven't watched this, you need to go back and see this. It's going to be like they'll probably show it at the end of the year highlights.
I wonder what you're going to see it compare it to.
I don't know. It's nuts.
Yeah.
It's amazing that Ricciardo was still able to drive. I thought that how hard he hit him. I'm surprised that his vehicle didn't end up stuck to Lance's vehicle. Yeah, at the very end of the race, I hope I don't give any spoilers away here, but Verstappen wins this race. And at the very end of it, he's talking with the other riders, and they're showing the replays, and it's the first time that they see this incident. And he's just like, oh my gosh, like the most emotion I've ever seen out of Max Verstappen. And it was over this. Somebody else, having this big shunt going on. But yeah, and of course, Lance Stroll is, blaming it all on Ricciardo.
Yeah, I did not want to take responsibility.
And Ricciardo, after the race, comments, he's like, well, I looked at the driver's cam, and his head is turned towards the turn and not towards the car that's in front of him, like you should be watching.
Right.
And
I mean, when you're behind a safety car and the safety car is ending, the rules are clear. You can't pass the guy in front of you, so you might as well just follow him.
Yeah,
I mean, there's no reason for it.
Just follow, but going back to, we're talking about Alonso, and Alonso, all of this basically happened because Alonso slammed on his brakes really hard.
Oh, that's right.
And basically caused a chain reaction.
He locked up. Yeah. That's right. Yeah, he did.
And because his
But you notice that everybody followed him, though, even though he locked up.
That's right. They all followed him. They all would have been safe.
And they would have been safe.
Except for his teammates, Knucklehead, at the very back. And slamming on the brakes. Not slamming on the brakes, but slamming into cars in front of him.
Yeah, so. Daniel was not pleased with Stroll at all.
Rightfully so, because it caused him to not be able to finish. So yeah.
Well, good for Alonso. I mean, he's on a. I was going to say he's strolling into he's strolling into the higher part of the grid.
Yes.
But and obviously he's going in with a 2-year contract, which is great for him. I think he's going to be there till he's 50, to be honest. I don't know.
He might be. We might see him at 60.
But what I thought was the most interesting about Fernando Alonso going into this whole weekend was his the development that came out with Taylor Swift.
Oh, yes.
So Taylor Swift says in one of her songs that just came out, she just dropped it like a couple days ago. She says, "I'm an Aston Martin that you steered straight into the ditch." I mean, Fernando, was that you? There was rumored that they were dating last year or something like that. It was the 18th song in her album. I wonder if his number is number 18.
His number is in the teens, I think. I don't remember if it's 18 or not. No, because Stroll is 18. Lance Stroll's is 18, no, so it couldn't be that.
It's number 14. Never
14,
mind.
So it is in the teens.
It would have been great. Taylor, you messed up. But yeah, check out that track. It's "I'm Gonna Get You Back" by Taylor Swift.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
You know, they Will Bruxton and what's the guy's name? Tim, one of the other announcers, the pre-race guys.
Mm-hmm.
So they did a hot lap in an Aston Martin.
Yeah.
And so they're going around this lap, and he's driving it like, Will Bruxton's like, you're watching his face, you're kind of wondering if he's going to get sick at some point because he looks a little on edge, but he's handling himself all right. But so that's like the type of G-forces and everything that they're going through with this car, and it's an SUV that they're taking around. At the very end of it, they get out and there's smoke coming up from the front wheels, and it's literally like the brakes are on fire from riding that.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I don't know why I'm telling you that at this point, but it seemed appropriate since we're talking about Taylor Swift and running
things
Aston
that
Martin
just,
into the ditch.
So
we're talking about
light
fires.
on fires.
Like some fires here and everything.
What about Hamilton? I thought he was kind of a loser on this one, but obviously he did have. I think he had a really good race.
Mm-hmm.
But just I think just everything, the whole his car just not working. It's like he's doing everything, he's trying everything, he's so frustrated. I think he kind of came out a loser, though he did. Drive. He did have a good race. All things considered. Horrible quali, decent sprint. Right, you got second. It's your first, podium.
Decent. Okay.
I mean, he was out of position.
I want to hear your position, so I'm going to state mine.
Okay,
Go.
so he was out of position. Yeah. Had a great qualifying for the sprint. Was in kind of no man's land. Had a great start.
Mm-hmm.
Got Norris, and more or less destroyed him with his first lap going in the inside. Right. Norris couldn't recover. Went to 7th. Hamilton just, stood his ground, eventually got overtaken by Verstappen. But, he was just kind of there, just rolling about. He was in no man's land, just in second.
Mm-hmm.
So he had a good race. He had a good, 19 laps. But then tweaks the car, kind of gets it from okay to not great in the span of a couple hours. And then can't get out of Q3 for qualifying. I'm sorry, but whether it's just an error, unforced error, or whatever, it's still not great when you're you're like, your position should be P6, P7, P8, and you can't get out of Q3. That's a problem. You're starting 18th, and you got to the points. That's a good drive. That's a good recovery,
mm-hmm.
but okay, I guess. Okay, but and what can you do? Like, what can he do? He's got a car that doesn't work. They've been talking about this car nonstop. Toto's been under pressure. They're telling there's rumors that that he, he's 1/3 owner of that team, right?
Mm-hmm.
That are they going to try to push him out? And Toto's been like, he's been frank, and he's been saying like, well, no, they're not. I've given it a lot of thought myself. Like, he's very self-analytical, and
mm-hmm.
he's like, well, it's not a me problem. It's not a management problem. It's a technical problem,
mm-hmm.
and we don't know what's going on with this car, right? So whether it's coming from the wind tunnel or from whatever programs they're using, they can't figure out what's wrong with the car. So how are they going to fix it? They
Yeah.
can't fix it if they don't know what the problem is.
Right.
So, you know, and then you have Hamilton, who's always going to be outspoken, not very outspoken in the sense that it's like super negative, but you know, he's a winner. He wants to win. You know, one of the most winningest driver ever. He's going to be upset, and you know, he wants to deliver, and when he can't, it's just kind of like you can see he's down. He's not the Hamilton of old. He's like a shadow of his former self.
Yeah.
And so you know, what do you call this weekend other than like just like going through the motions?
I don't know. I mean, like, okay, let's break it down into some smaller bits here.
Sure.
So sprint qualifying.
Okay.
Q3. All right. He actually does well. He qualifies for second position, right?
Yes.
And it's actually pretty impressive watching him race those qualifying because it's pouring down rain and he handles the car perfectly, doesn't go off the track, you know, and ends up getting second in the qualifying. Yeah. And then from the very start of the sprint, he takes off, does better than Norris, who's in pole position, and he holds on to second. Like, you know, I mean, honestly, in a car that's really not supposed to be in second or shouldn't be up there that high. Like, the car is really kind of middle of the pack car, middle lower end of the top 10. You know, and there he is in second, and he's able to hold on to it to second place. I mean, he's in first basically the whole time, or the first 5 laps, and holds on to second for the rest of the way.
Yeah.
So, and he's holding it on to, you know, with Max Verstappen passing him and being out in front. Yeah. But the other guys don't really come close to him. He's, you know.
Well, I mean, he's got Alonso to thank for that.
Yes. So Alonso, and once again, Alonso plays a big role all weekend long.
Held up everybody for him.
I know.
He was his defense.
Yes, this is Alonso trying to pay him back for him maybe hazing him and so forth. McLaren, I don't know. Yeah. I just made that up. But so I mean, real positive there, right?
Yeah.
Like he hasn't been like that. He hasn't been on the podium since what, 22? Yeah. So I mean, that's pretty good for him. Like, I mean, it's a sprint race, so it's kind of like it's not full quality, full quality race, I guess, but it's a race. It's against all of these guys he races against, right? So that's good. But then later that day, he goes into qualifying for the Grand Prix, and like you said, he comes in right at the very end, 18th. It's horrible. Horrible. Like, he ought to be in the top 10 with that car. What's going on with him? Well, I mean, this isn't making excuses. This is just stating the facts. Like, they know that they don't know the exact problems with that car. They have some ideas. They know it performs better in cooler weather. Yeah. Okay. So qualifying for the race, when it's wet, that car is going to perform better because it's cooled off. The track is going to be a lot closer to the air temperature, right? Which is cooler when it's raining. Then during the sprint, it's still cooler weather. It hasn't really warmed up or anything like that. So the track's cooler. Car's performing well. Starts warming up from everybody driving, from the temperature. It's not raining. And then they have the qualifying for the Grand Prix. Well, the car's not going to do as well. Not 18th. Like, he ought to be, he still ought to be in, getting to the top 10. Yeah. Right. But then during the race, like, he does move up to 9th from 18th, which is really good. But I mean, he is passing people. He's doing a good job. He's making good passes, making good moves. But you also hear a lot of complaints on the radio of basically, like, the car is not that great, but he's doing a good job with it. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, overall, it's good. But the whole thing, like, if he qualified decently, I would have said, it's a pretty good weekend for him. Yeah. But that qualifying at 18th, I just.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah, it was just a mistake on his end. He could have knocked out Sergio Perez.
Yeah.
Sergio Perez was right on the chopping block. He was like 15th. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Had Hamilton not messed up his first sector, he would have been in. Mm-hmm. And probably higher. Like, I don't know. Probably like P7 going into Q2.
Yeah. So, I mean, with all of that said, I do think like on our last time that we had our little podcast going, I said that it's hard for me to talk about this, but I'd said, hey, I think that Sainz leaving, that's maybe not the best move for Ferrari, but after watching Hamilton this weekend, even though like that qualifying was so bad, I can see why. I think that it's much better move.
Much better move for Hamilton.
It's hard for me to say, but yes. Yeah, I think it's a better move for Ferrari, going over and getting Hamilton versus holding on to Sainz.
You think so? Oh, so
you're
flip-flop. Completely reversing.
I'm flipping.
On this.
I was like complete after the sprint
all the way.
Yeah, after the sprint and qualifying, I like flipped.
Yeah.
And now like after that poor 18th position on qualifying, but he did well in the race, I thought.
Yeah, no, he did.
All things considered.
Yeah, all things considered.
And that car is not that good.
Yeah, no, the car is
really
terrible.
Sad.
We'll see them be competitive maybe after 2026.
Yeah.
I mean, at this point, again, like I'm saying, like it's going to be going through the motions. It's going to be testing. Mm-hmm. It's just going to be long testing sessions. What's going to work? What's going to, just to see, like, just to identify, hey, what's the problem?
Mm-hmm.
Like they raise the car, it works better, but it's slow. They lower the car, it's got no balance. It can't turn. Like, I mean, the car's messed up. They've tried, right? Mm-hmm. They tried with another platform on that car, and now it's something different, and it's still not working. And they've got good technical people, so it's just, it'll get worked out with the new regs, I think. And, we might see Hamilton, perform like he's been performing, even with this recovery race, had he been higher up, yeah, he'll make it to maybe a podium here and there. But I think that's as far as that's what this weekend told me was like, Mercedes, let's just get them out of the way. It's a Red Bull show, it's a Ferrari show, it's a McLaren show.
Yeah.
And Mercedes, you're the best of the rest, maybe. Watch out.
Yeah, that is the truth.
Yeah, watch out, because Aston Martin, that's who you're battling right now. Mm-hmm. And Aston Martin with Fernando Alonso being totally relaxed, didn't really care that he DNF'd. He just knows he's the man right now. So you've got, just confidence level. Mm-hmm. You've got Alonso versus Russell and Hamilton. Russell's okay. Hamilton's obviously not, but that's what we're going to see for the rest of the year, I think.
Yeah.
But and speaking about some of the lower end of the grid, we've got Alpine and we've got Sauber. Alpine finally looked like you know what Alpine's been doing?
No,
they've been.
Well, I do, but no.
They've been incremental.
Yeah,
they're not in any headlines, and they're not. They're just slowly creeping up, one place at a time.
Yeah,
every race, slowly. Getting from the very bottom to now they're like in the 15 range. Mm-hmm. And I think they're going to continue to do that. I think, quietly, they're just performing a little bit better every weekend. And if they do that, hey, whatever they did over the winter that really like wasn't great, hopefully they get through it this year, and next year they do better. But
they did seem like they were going in the right direction.
Yeah,
I think
they
had upgrades on Albon's car, I believe, and not on Ocon's. I think they had some upgrades.
Gasly, you mean?
Yeah, Gasly. Sorry.
It was a French sandwich, a baguette of sorts. It was Ocon, Albon, and Gasly.
Yeah, they had a little bit. I mean, there was one point where Hamilton was complaining about how slow his car was, and that he couldn't pass the car in front of him, and the car in front of him was an Alpine. So they're doing something a little bit right.
They're
moving in the right direction, maybe.
But
it's
what matters.
Nice, like what you said, there's just slowly, incrementally.
Yeah.
And they're doing it in a way that it's not real flashy, but they're at the back, so they can kind of be that way.
Yeah.
You can, some people say the way you eat an elephant is one bite at a time. So maybe that's the case in improving in F1. Just
Yeah.
one adjustment at a time. So,
And then we had the stars of the show,
yeah.
Kick Sauber.
Oh yes.
So obviously Bottas was a big major player, right? DNF'd.
Yes.
Well, let's bring it back. Let's bring it back to the sprint.
Okay.
They qualified 9 and 10,
Which is great for
which
them.
is fantastic. And all the
Especially Joe.
and all the fans were all like, "Yeah, this is great." They're all Sauber fans. Not all of them. You saw a lot of support for all teams.
Yes.
But for sure, they're there for Joe and they're there for Sauber, and obviously Bottas is part of that team. But Bottas, did great. Joe was doing great in the sprint, and in the race, obviously Bottas was a huge catalyst for a bunch of change in the race when he had his DNF in like lap 19, right?
Yeah.
Forced everybody to go to a one-stop strategy, got the VSC out, and everybody's race just got jumbled up, But nice to see that they were doing all right. Their pit stops looked a little better.
Yeah, they had like a 3-second pit stop at some point. Yeah,
that was pretty cool. And then obviously again, Joe, super emotional. What do you have on Joe?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty cool because when he was, about 20 years ago, the very first Grand Prix that they had in China, he was there as a spectator, as a little kid. And that's like when he saw that's what inspired him to become a race car driver. And so it's really cool that he's back at his home place. He's from Shanghai, and that he's able to go there and able to compete. Yeah. So I thought that was really awesome. They did something that I don't believe they've done this before at the very end of the race at the Grand Prix. And some may, who knows? I don't know, but I thought it was pretty cool. But when they have the first 3 places and they pull up on the racetrack and stop, they had Joe pull up behind them and stop as well. And of course, all the grandstand was cheering for him.
He had his little placard too.
Yeah, he had his little placard out with his face on it and all. But and he got out of the car and was waving and super thankful. And I think
got on his knees.
Tears were shed. Thankfulness.
Both hands on his face.
Yeah,
getting all emotional,
real emotional and everything, which is really awesome. I mean,
it is. It is a special moment for the people.
Yeah, I think it's great that they did that. But also, like, I don't know if they've ever done that before, but why that wasn't thought of before. I mean, because how cool would that be for all these guys when they're coming back home to their races and, and how that, can kind of inspire other people and more participation and more like, fandom of the sport.
Exactly.
So,
yeah,
I thought it was really cool.
You know what I did have tears for?
What? Tell me.
Ferrari's tire plan.
Tears of
plan
joy
A,
or tears
plan
of pain?
B,
Yes.
Plan C, plan D.
Yes, it was so great. It was so great to hear that. They always have it's funny because they name all of these plans like by the alphabet. Yeah. So and this week we got to hear it on race radio.
Yeah. Plan D.
We're on to plan B right now. Plan D is not working. Are we shifting? No, we're staying with plan D. Okay.
Yeah. You have the whole alphabet for their tire strategy. It's amazing. I know we touched on science a little bit, but not the best for performance from him this time around.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's all he's driving with a lot of I don't know what it is. It's almost like I feel like it's almost like anger. I don't know, but I don't know. That's just I feel
Maybe.
it. I feel it. If I were to put some sort of like, if I were to quantify it some sort of way, it'd be like, I don't know, like he's just mad. Like he's just driving like a madman. And this one, I don't know if it's because of all the things surrounding him and the talks, because we've had talk, and we get to the driver's market here in a bit, but with everything around him kind of holding up the driver's market, I don't know if this maybe was a little bit too much pressure or it was just the car or the tire strategy or something. But obviously, he got beat out by his teammate for the first time this season. So we'll see what comes in Miami, but it was interesting to see him kind of like really battling it out tooth and nail with his teammate, and obviously with Alonso as well. But
yeah, it was. This was the first race that he started that he didn't podium.
Yeah,
and he didn't look as good as Leclerc.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if there was a little bit of damage to his car or not. I don't know on that. But yeah, he didn't look as good as in qualifying. He did have, well, both the qualifying it was qualifying where he spun out on that last turn, ran into the wall. He actually, everybody was talking about how great he did at drifting across and not damaging the vehicle, because he was able to drive it around.
Yeah,
and pit stop, get it prepared, and then get back out there and finish the qualifying. Which Aston Martin filed some lame complaint about it.
Protest.
He stopped his car and then he started again. He can't do that.
Yeah, no.
And, of course, that's to the letter of the law, but the spirit of the law is that so you don't have, more accidents or things like that. If they're able to continue to move their vehicle without, aided support, then they're A-okay.
Exactly.
So he, that was, of course, dropped, but it's kind of silly.
It could have just been the weekend itself and Ferrari not being able to get that car in the right balance and in the right window. But yeah, I mean, he had a great save coming out of Q2 and then making it to Q3, right?
Yeah.
And got his car fixed in that red flag. So overall pretty okay, but not where Ferrari wanted to be, and then I don't think not where Sainz wanted to be. I think Sainz was looking to be on top and kind of just ended up not this whole weekend. So
yeah, I mean, Norris kind of commented that he thought that he was going to be fighting the Ferraris a lot more.
Yeah, no.
And it just wasn't the case.
No.
I mean, when that safety car hit, I don't know if that changed. Well, it obviously gave Norris a good position to keep going, but for whatever reason, Ferrari just couldn't catch up.
Yeah, but I guess that takes us into the drivers' market. We talked about Alonso already a little bit, and we're just on Sainz. And I don't know if you heard, but this last week, Helmut Marko was very vocal about some of the things. I don't know what his plan is. They're kind of outing the contract or some of the contract details for Sainz, but he definitely said that they were in talks with Sainz and that it was hard to beat what Audi was offering Sainz, which I think is a 3-year contract, which is you don't see that often anymore. You usually see like a 1+1 or a 2-year at most, but a 3 years pretty lengthy contract. And something that they're not able to compete with, them being Red Bull, right?
Yeah.
So, I don't know exactly what the deal is. Those types of things don't typically come out, though. I'm sure it's very strategic on Helmut's part.
I think so, because he commented something about, it's something along the lines of, well, does Sainz want to win or does he want to get a lot of money?
Right.
Which is really kind of a lousy thing to say there. I mean, now if he's offering the second spot on Red Bull, well, yeah, he's probably going to make, he's going to win a lot more races than he would at Audi. But at the same time, this is a business, and if you like where you're going, like the project that they're working on, and you're going to make way, way, way more money. I mean, you can set your family up for generations to come on this type of stuff. From looking at things, when I think of it, okay, well, is he going to go to Red Bull? He's already been there once.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's going to happen again.
I
don't really think it is. Okay, so Mercedes, does he really want to go there? Because you're going to go there in 24. You're not going to win.
Yeah.
You might win in 26, maybe not. Who knows? They may not offer as long of a contract. You go to Audi. Audi might end up being the most attractive option for him out of all the rides that are out there. A lot of money. Yeah.
A lot of money, a lot of investment, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And then, So, one of the other things is with the V-Carb team, which up until this point of the season, we've always called it RB. But they have politely asked that people would call them V-Carb. So V like Visa, Cash App, Red Bull.
RB.
Yes.
Oh, Red Bull.
Yes. It's not a new diet fad or anything like that I'm aware of. But yeah, so the V-Carb team, they've Helmut talked about selling them off because they're part of the Red Bull team and selling them to somebody else. And then with that, one of the potential buyers is Gunther.
Oh, Gunther Steiner.
Yes.
Yeah. I think there's a few folks.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Andretti, and Andretti, which has already kind of created a factory in England.
Yeah,
they already have a base.
So this is his other way. Since he got turned down on the other way, this might be another way for him to get in.
Yeah,
is buying the RB,
the RB team,
the V-Carb. Sorry, V-Carb.
Yeah,
please accept my apology.
Speaking Red Bull, then you also have a Christian Horner kind of putting Toto Wolff back in his place, telling the media that he should be more concerned with his car than unavailable drivers.
That's awesome.
Yeah, because he's courting Max pretty heavily.
Yeah,
I hear so.
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes, but
yeah.
I don't see that really going anywhere, especially with Red Bull's winning ways. Toto had mentioned something about Max being a person of depth, and that only simple-minded people would only think about winning. So hey, man, I might be phrasing that incorrectly, but
that sounds good.
That's in
that
the spirit.
Sounds really good. It sounds like something you might say.
Yeah.
I mean, and okay, if you're Mercedes and you want to go after Max Verstappen, I mean, you got to pull out all the stops and you got to look at it creatively, because can you pull on his heartstrings for being a part of a developing team, bringing a team back to glory or whatever you want to call it.
Wasting a year, in other words.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, that's what he would be doing.
2025 would just go down the drain.
Yeah.
And then, who knows what would happen in 2026.
Don't worry about ever catching up with Hamilton's point total, career point total, or win total. It's okay.
Yeah. Well, if he stays, I mean, he's still super young, and if he stays there for a little bit longer, he's still in his 20s. He's going to surpass Hamilton for sure.
Oh, yeah.
If Red Bull continue in their winning ways, which
yes,
I don't see how they wouldn't unless their powertrain situation with Ford eventually just doesn't go the way they anticipate. But
that's true.
Well, next race, 2 weeks from now. Miami.
Yes. There's many songs written about
I was going to
Miami.
say Viva Miami, but that...
Wait, wrong race. That's later this year in Las Vegas.
Yeah,
yes.
that's right. Yeah.
Yes.
No,
yeah, there's what is it? No, I'm not even going to do it justice. It's where somebody spells it out.
Well,
saving everybody by me not trying to
sing
impersonate.
Go ahead, tell it.
No,
karaoke.
No. Let's please continue. But no, Miami is going to be in a couple of weeks. It's going to be pretty interesting. Different circumstances, different race. I am going to guess it's going to be hot and humid there. Just a simple guess.
Yeah.
I mean, it is Southern Florida.
Street circuit?
Yes, street circuit. Street circuits are always good.
Yeah.
Sergio Perez loves them.
Yeah.
And so, this race, a bunch of teams, they were giving away tickets. The Mercedes team in particular was giving away tickets, like 2 tickets for all weekend, like paid. You go there, you get to hang out with them. I think you get to be down there with their team while they're working on everything. So all access.
Oh, nice.
Like really nice. They were giving that away. That contest ended at the beginning of April. I entered it. I have not received my notice of winning yet. Surprise, surprise, right? So I don't think I'm winning that one. And then also Williams was doing the same type of thing. Theirs was through the 15th of April. I haven't received notification of my winnings yet either.
Got to check your junk email just in case.
I know, man. I just keep going back day after day, and it's just not there. Yeah. So So I don't know if some of you guys had entered that. I think there were some other ones too. I think Pirelli had a contest. It's kind of interesting. Like some of these big name companies that are involved actually have contests to go to these. But it was mainly like as I looked through this, I was like, okay, well, I saw Williams first, so I was like, okay, well, Williams has one. What about these other teams? So I started looking through these other teams, but I didn't necessarily see as many. But they do have, like, from time to time, they'll have these contests. So, yeah,
just got to follow.
So maybe this,
You
never knew you would get some vacation and contest enrolling tips and guides on our podcast. But now you have. So Miami in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. So I have Verstappen, Perez, Leclerc.
Well, Verstappen definitely, and I will take Perez, and for the fun of it, Norris. But it'll probably be Sainz. But I'm going to take Norris.
You're going to take Norris.
I'm going to take Norris.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
I think Ferrari's going to have some upgrades going. Maybe. They should after this past weekend.
McLaren might as well. I mean,
I know.
We know that they're working on something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They're smelling the wins.
Yes.
And I think Norris is probably itching for one win too. So
yeah, I think he's kind of dialed in right now for the most part. For him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe we see something from Piastri as well, right?
It's very possible. I mean, he looked good this weekend, but he had some car issues. I think the underneath side of his car got damaged, and that was part of the reason why he dropped off.
Thank you, Daniel.
Yes, thank you, Daniel and Lance Stroll, messing things up for him. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I look forward to that. That's 2 weeks from now. And I guess we'll wrap this up.